Titans, I think this might be some of the most fun you'll have playing Stasis, because it takes an exotic that's kinda looked down on and makes it do a load of high single target damage by using some pretty niche tech, or at least something I haven't seen people talk about. But what makes it feel so fun to use is that you become the thing that does damage. And I mean that in the same way by how Thunder Crash just turns you into a missile. This build turns you into this crayon eating thing that just launches itself into enemies, does a bunch of damage, whilst healing you and giving damage resist too. It's such a reckless playstyle that works really well, but in a weird way. Oh, and rocket jumping. Yeah, that's a thing we can do too. I'll go over that at the end. Let's get into it. And this was going to be electric, but rock kind of seems right here. Here's the quick build. 2 timestamps on screen if you want to move ahead. One for the Blast Wave Striders tech, and the other for gameplay tips. Glacier Grenade, Shiver Strike, Towering Barricade, Tectonic Harvest, Diamond Lance, Whisper of Shards, Torment, Hunger, Rhyme, and Conduction. Conduction's flexible though. Here's your mod setup, and you're wanting Blast Wave Striders and Alethonym. The whole build is working around Blast Wave Striders. As for what they do, you get 75% explosive self-damage resistance. Titan make boom, but Titan no go boom. But the main thing you care about is the explosive the exotic itself causes, or in getting kills you charge up Blast Wave Striders. Rank and File gives 7.5% to the bar, Elite and above give 15%, and Alethenym's Vestiges give 10%. Once it's charged up, you can slide, or deal explosive self-damage, and you'll go flying backwards, but you'll launch out 8 bits of shrapnel in front of you, in an arc pattern, which deal a really good chunk of damage each, and spawn a Stasis Crystal on landing. This charge slide will also give you 5 stacks of Frost Armour. Here though, there is a way to massively change the pattern of our shrapnel and crystals, which is where our single target damage in the build comes from. A big complaint I've heard is that people don't like that the spread of shrapnel is so wide, but it's because they've probably been using them wrong, or at the very least not using this tech, which will make the shrapnel much more reliable. If you slide, then immediately use a melee into an enemy that has some form of lunge to it, which we have in Shiver Strike, your shrapnel becomes way more compact. Unlike a regular slide, the spread is completely random. You could do 100 slide melees and not get the same pattern, but the shrapnel gets much tighter in its spread, and you no longer get hit with the explosive knockback. There will be cases where 1 or 2 bits might go off in completely weird directions, but it's overall much better at doing damage in a smaller cone. When you do this, you really want to make sure that your melee hits the target you're wanting the most shrapnel to land on. The shrapnel comes from your hitbox, so whiffing a melee and lunging past your target actually loses you a lot of damage. You can also do this combo without a melee, but you're going to need to place a Glacier Grenade right behind your target, get super up close, and then slide. Your shrapnel will now mostly hit the Glacier Grenade, doing similar amounts of damage, but I generally find the melee to be much more consistent, and not getting hit with the Strider's self-knockback helps in keeping you in the fight. But I hope the footage you'll see throughout the video shows the kind of damage you get. It's taking champs down from almost full health to almost dead. And outside of demonstrating stuff on Carl, this is GM footage that I'm pretty underlevel for. It is a load of damage, and this is your bread and butter combo. Any champ, any boss that won't just one-shot you if you get too close, slide, launch yourself into your target, damage and Frost Armour. It's so titany, but it's so much fun. I've already mentioned a couple of abilities so far, so let's go over those first. Glacier's our grenade, which spawns in 5 Stasis Crystals, and anything standing where those crystals form are frozen, and Shiver Strike is your melee, which you can hold down to lunge a further distance, and on hitting a target, you knock them back, applying slow, and attaching an explosive to them that'll explode after, applying 50 slow again to their target and anything near the explosion. Glacial Quake's your only super choice, and for class ability I went with Towering Barricade, but either one's good here. For your aspects, we're taking Tectonic Harvest as our first, where on shattering Stasis Crystals or frozen enemies, you spawn in a Stasis Shard, with Stasis Shards now giving you a small HP bump and a stack of Frost Armour. And we're also taking Diamond Lance here, where on getting a Stasis Weapon kill, Stasis Ability kill, or Shatter kill, you make a Diamond Lance, which has a 7-second cooldown on spawning in another. The lance can be thrown to freeze in an area or slammed into the ground, freezing enemies around you and giving you and allies 2 Frost Armour stacks. If a Diamond Lance on either its throw or slam hits a Stasis Crystal, it'll shatter. For your fragments, Whisper of Rime to increase your frost armor timer to 13 seconds and increase your mech stacks to 8, totaling 36% damage resist. Whisper of Shards, where on shattering your Stasis crystal, you get 500% increased base grenade regen for 5 seconds, which can be extended to 10 seconds on shattering more crystals. Whisper of Torment, where on taking damage you get 7% grenade energy and 12% when you have frost armor, although this does have a 1 second internal cooldown. And Whisper of Hunger, which makes Stasis shards refund more melee energy, with small shards now giving 17.5 melee energy. Your last one's a Flex Pig. I run Conduction because I'm lazy, but some other great choices here could be Fissures for damage, Whisper of Chains or Chill for more Stasis shards, Whisper of Bonds for super regen, Rending for better Alethonym damage, or Reversal if you're wanting some more Overload stun. The fragments I have here are more just what I prefer. You can go with them or switch them out for others, it's entirely up to you. One thing that can't be changed in the build though is your exotic weapon, Alethonym. This grenade launcher, aside from just being basically a primary special weapon, is what makes Striders work in the high end. Every kill with Alethonym will spawn in a vestige. Picking these up is going to do two things for you. It'll charge up the gun's perk, which lets you special reload to shoot a special or heavy break, but those vestiges also charge up Striders for 10% each. On a direct hit against a champ, mini-boss or boss, you impale that enemy, doing 6 ticks of damage, but each of those ticks will spawn in a vestige. So one shot can charge up to 60% of Striders, and 2 is a full charge, and there's no cooldown on vestige spawns or how many shots can impale an enemy at once. This makes the build super reliable in the high end because of how many champs you'll be facing down and how easy they make it to spawn in vestiges to get Striders charged up. Right, gameplay tips. Let's start with Alethonym. You should try and start seeing champs and bosses like batteries for your Blast Wave Striders. 2 Alethonym shots that impale is a fully charged Striders bar, and 3 is your heavy ammo special reload. What makes this even nicer though is that Alethonym, when it impales, doesn't immediately do its normal explosion. That happens after the last damage tick goes off, so whilst it's ticking for damage against a frozen enemy, they won't shatter or shatter any Stasis crystals that are around them straight away. So you can freeze a champ, Alethonym shot, then go in for your Striders melee combo. And using champs and bosses to fuel your combos is going to become a big part of your gameplay if you're doing stuff like GMs. For unstops, freeze them first, then double Alethonym. On the second shot it will shatter them and stun, then go in for your combo. With barriers, 2 hits will be enough to bring up their shield, so get 2 Alethonym shots in, break the shield, then go in for your combo. And for overloads, you just need to make sure they're stunned first before you go in for the combo. And for Striders themselves, there's a lot to talk about here too. One thing you're going to need to be very aware of is how much charge you have on Striders. It's so easy to do a slide, not realise they're charged, and get sent flying backwards with a charge jump. But you have to be careful of Alethonym, even more than accidental slides. That final tick of damage that Alethonym does on an impaled enemy counts as explosion damage, meaning you get too close to an impaled enemy, and you're going to proc Striders without meaning to do so. When these accidental charge jumps go off, they're not massively punishing, with 2 Alethonym shots on a champ or boss will get Striders back. They're more just annoying and something you're going to need to get used to avoiding. On a more positive note, Striders are so ridiculously flexible. If you need single target damage, go for your combo, but if you need ag clear or want to set up damage over a large area, just do a regular slide and pepper shrapnel and crystals over where you're fighting. You have the option to do both, and with playtime with the build it becomes obvious when you need to do one or the other. You can even use this exotic for ability regen and survivability, as it makes Stasis crystals. You can slide, get 5 stacks of frost armor from the exotic perk, then shatter the crystals it spawns that will then proc Tectonic Harvest for Stasis shards and more frost armor, and get Whisper of Shards going for 500% increased grenade regen. This build also has quite a natural feeling gameplay loop to it. Use your melee, then use your Glacier Grenade to make Stasis shards. Shatter the crystals for melee energy and grenade regen, working in Diamond Lances to either keep up frost armor stacks or use them to freeze or shatter enemies and crystals. Tectonic Harvest does have an internal cooldown stopping you from making Stasis shards all the time, so having Diamond Lance or Strider's exotic perk as a way to keep up your frost armor needs to be something you do. There is another combo you can do with Diamond Lance too, where you do a Blast Wave Strider's slide, then whilst holding a Diamond Lance, immediately slam down. It's not something you do for single target damage, more just so that you aren't sent flying back and you can stay up close fighting. And with this build, you're going to want to be using your heavy and special a lot. Almost as much as you might use Alethonym is how much you're wanting to spam your other weapons. As soon as you can special reload for the ammo type you want, do. For your weapons, special and heavy can really be anything here, but it's also very much up to the seasonal artifact what weapons you need to use for champ stunning in the high end. This build has absolutely no problem doing unstops. I didn't even need a weapon to stun those champs, but for overload and barrier, there's nothing really built in. You could use Shiver Strike as it applies slow for overloads, but then it means that you don't do your combo properly, so it's kind of a null point. But apart from Whisper of Reversal, there's not much for overloads. So use what will work for champ stunning, and if you're in content with no champs, use whatever you want. And for perks on these weapons, anything with Pugilist, Demolitionist, or Headstone could be nice for ability regen, and Chill Clip could also be a great option for dealing with overloads outside of the artifact. Volt Shot or Jolt and Feedback could be options here too. And lastly, the mod setup here is building into making Stasis weapons in the build feel better, although the mod setup here isn't fixed as the mods in this build aren't massively impactful, so you can change stuff up as you want. If you're wanting a more weapon focused setup like I have here, on the helmet I run double heavy ammo finder and a harmonic siphon. On the arms I use triple harmonic loader. On the chest I use charged up and resist mods. On the legs I run double stasis weapon surge and a stacks on stacks. And on the mark I run double time dilation and a reaper. For your stat split you're wanting resilience, then discipline, then strength, then intellect. The other two stats don't really matter. And what's
Screaming Eagles!
Hello? Rocket jumping. Proper TF2 soldier rocket jumping. Stick on a danger zone rocket launcher with bipod to chain jumps, and two things now happen. 1. You take 0 explosive self damage with Striders and danger zone, meaning you can point blank rocket launcher something in the face and not have a scratch on you. But 2, you can now rocket jump. Find 3 enemies, aim this at your feet, shoot, and you will get launched. This is one of the most unique and weird playstyles I've ever had playing D2, but it's so much fun and it feels so right that the class that can rocket jump or shoot a rocket point blank is Titan. This isn't the kind of thing I'd take into a GM run I want done in the quickest time, but seeing and using your build to rocket jump around fights is honestly some of the most fun you'll have playing Destiny. And if you really want to commit to this kind of playstyle, when you're way up in the air, you can hold down Shiver Strike, and until you hit the ground, you won't come out of that melee, and when you do, you won't take full damage. And just recently they've changed it so that when you whiff a Shiver Strike, you now get 85% of it refunded, meaning you're able to kind of spam this. And seasonal artifact mods. I'm not even going to say skip ahead, I'm going to speed run this. One with Frost, Rapid Impacts, Wind Chill, Crystalline Converter, Armour of Eramis, Elder Storm, Concussive Reload, Serve Cold, and Brain Freeze. And that's the build. I really hope this is something you Behemoth mains like. It felt really fun having burst in the neutral game, which is something Behemoth doesn't have loads of, from an exotic I know people were not given the time of day. And I do also want to say that if you want to go mess around with this on Prismatic, or even Strand, you can too. Frenzy Blade as a melee has lunged to it, which means it works in the same way that Shiver Strike does, but this really felt like it was designed for Stasis, with all the Frost Armour and Crystal synergy that's got going on. But that's the build, and that's about it from me. See ya!